it for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Leur 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida TB. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Tuesday, August 27th. Special thanks to everyone watching on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter. And special thanks to our partners, Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America. And everyone knows that they are driven to be different. La Bittt Tibi. They've launched their new Ultra Lager, a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for the hot summer days with only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can. Available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. It's ultra light and ultra refreshing. As a matter of fact, let me go get you a can to show it to you, what it looks like. Well, you see it there, but... And there it is. Huh? What a beauty this is. Why not? I like it. And I'm not just saying that because they pay me to say it. I really do. All right, okay. Also brought to you in part by Playground. Step into the world-renowned poker experience at Playground, where the free food and drinks, a cash game tables, a bad beat jackpot that's over $2.1 million, weekly promotions, daily tournaments, unmatched customer service. Why go anywhere else and why play anywhere else? Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. Playground. Today was an interesting day for me, folks. Not every day that you have the chance to talk to the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. And as far as an interview is concerned, it's the first time I was able to interview Montreal Canadiens general manager Kent Hughes. It happened earlier this morning, precisely at around 10:55 a.m. on BPM Sports Radio, because once again, if you haven't heard, yesterday officially, I made my return to radio after a 27-month hiatus. As a matter of fact, it's the 27-month anniversary today. So today was day 2. It's an all-sports radio station in Park Extension, and the signal going all the way out to Gatineau, to Quebec. And once again, the only all-sports radio station in French here in Montreal, BPM Sport. You can check it out at bpmsport.ca. You can download their application, or even better yet, you can follow them on their YouTube channel and subscribe. So I had a conversation with Kent Hughes that went, I would say, about 24, 25 minutes or so, which I very much look forward to discussing with hockey analyst Pierre McGuire. How are you?
Tony, welcome back. Congratulations on your new gig.
Thank you.
It's always great when you have a chance to talk to decision makers in the National Hockey League. And clearly, Kent Hughes is one of the up-and-coming decision makers in the National Hockey League.
You're right about that. And of course, Pierre McGuire, co-host of the Sick Podcast, The Eye Test, which you can catch weekdays at 4 p.m. on all social media channels, of course, including YouTube Live. Pierre, you helped me out with this interview because some of the things that you've said on the Sick Podcast are some of the things that I asked Kent Hughes about. And, one of the people I talked to him about, of course, one of the players I talked to him about is Lane Hutson. You've had some interesting things to say vis-a-vis Lane Hutson. I don't want to quote you, but I believe for the most part, you said that you think the Canadiens should bring him along slowly, give him some good power play time, maybe not give him too many minutes. And you've also talked about one of the things you'd like to see is 11 forwards and 7D. I don't know how long you'd like to see that, Pierre, or for how often, but those are things you've talked about, right? Bringing him along slowly, making him a power play specialist, and playing 11 forwards and 7D, correct?
Yes.
All right. Okay. In terms of before we get to what Kent Hughes had to say, in terms of 11 forward 7D, Pierre, what's the longest amount of time, or, I know we'd have to guess here, what's the most you think you've seen a team, if you can guess an amount of games that you've actually seen them play with 11 forwards and 7D? Because, we've heard that coaches, maybe even players more, like to get into the rhythm. You roll the 4 lines at forward, you roll the 3 duos on defense. The players like it more, I think, unless, of course, you're the 7D, then you'd probably like the 11 forwards and 7D. But which team traditionally has played with 11 forwards and 7D more often than not?
Tampa Bay Lightning. They were really the first team that I saw do it for an extended period of time. And they did it because they wanted to get Stamkos on the ice more. They wanted Braden Point on the ice more. They told their role players that they were going to have a penalty killing job, or they were going to have a checking job, but that they were probably going to play 8 to 10 minutes, and those star players are going to play 21, 22, 23 minutes up front. And they also, I think, were trying to insulate some of their defensemen who were probably not 100% healthy, so they always wanted to have an extra body. But John Cooper and his folks in Tampa, I saw them really utilize it in a very positive way.
And of course, when we talk about the Montreal Canadiens, even though Mike Matheson could skate like the wind, as a matter of fact, he glides. It would give you an opportunity to probably shave a couple of minutes off of him. It will also, what 7D would do is you wouldn't be putting a young defenseman in the stands. He would be playing. Right, whether it's going to be a Lane Hutson, or it's going to be a Justin Barron, or it's going to be a Struble or a Jack guy, you want these 4 defensemen, I think, are 23 or 24 years of age or younger. You want them to play. If you go to 7D, they're not sitting in the stands, and I think it could very much help in that regard too.
That's a great point. The other thing they opened up is when they traded Kovacevic away, it opened up another opportunity for one of those young players you're talking about to get more ice time. And then they trade Jordan Harris away. That opens up another opportunity for a young guy. And the one thing you and I have talked about a lot, Tony, the organizational depth of the Canadiens' defense is outstanding. It's not a little bit good. It's really good. And they utilized one of those defensemen to go out and address some scoring need by getting Patrik Laine. And they also got a second-round pick in that transaction, which is a phenomenal move by Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes. So they've been wise in terms of how they've utilized their depth in the organization to date anyways.
Let's hear from Kent Hughes regarding Lane Hutson.
L'idée, vu qu'il y a un sens d'hockey très haut qui devrait être mieux dans la Ligue nationale que dans la Ligue américaine, j'ai entendu ça comme idée souvent. Je ne suis pas en désaccord, mais il y a tellement d'autres facteurs. Alors, on a vu 2 bons games de Lane contre Détroit, puis on va continuer à le suivre, puis prendre des décisions en fonction de qu'est-ce qu'on croit dans le bien-être de Lane Hutson.
Let's
Je veux pas nécessairement.
Okay. No, let's. I think he said, je veux pas nécessairement le cacher. Okay. My question was, I said to him, I said, Kent, I believe that some players are actually better served in the National Hockey League than they are in the American Hockey League, where, they'll probably play better in the National Hockey League than they would play better in the American Hockey League. And I think Lane Hutson is one of those guys, because I think the way he sees the game, and I think the way he plays the game, there will be more players on that level of IQ and that level of skill and ability in the National Hockey League than in the American Hockey League. Pierre, before I continue any more on that, would you agree with what I just said?
100%. I had a player like that in Hartford, and his name is Dan Kesmer. He was a great player at Lake Superior State. I came in, he was playing in Springfield. We brought him up, and people were like, why are you bringing him up? Because we watched him in training camp, and we thought he played better with the NHL guys than with the AHL guys. And I think Danny played probably close to 500 games in the NHL. Hartford wasn't his last stop. It was his first stop, and I thought he did some really good things. But I would agree with everything you just said. The American Hockey League is a really hard league, and it's a great developmental league. But sometimes you got guys playing 3 games in 2.5 days. Sometimes you got guys that are being called up from the East Coast Hockey League that really don't understand the game plan that the team's trying to play. So a skilled player, sometimes, not always, a skilled player, especially on the back end, he can get hung out to dry pretty quick in the American Hockey League. It's a hard league to play in. It's a really hard league to play in.
Would he be, if he was in the American Hockey League, a skilled player like that who likes to have the puck on his stick, obviously is going to be the center of the game plan for the opposing team. Would he be more of a target in the American Hockey League than he would in the National Hockey League?
Well, he'd be a target for sure. I don't know if he'd be more of a target because I think eventually people in the NHL are going to target him. Tony, I saw him. I'm so comfortable and confident talking about this player because I saw him play so much over the time that he was at Boston University or playing internationally for Team USA. And he was a target every single time he played at BU. Every single game, people went after him. And I've seen him play in NCAA tournament games. I've seen him play in Beanpot games. I've seen him play in unbelievable rivalry games against Boston College, against Harvard, obviously against Northeastern. So I've seen him in a lot of big moments. He's a target all the time. He understands that. The problem is he's not overly large. And that, to me, that's the biggest thing for him. His legs are powerful and strong. It's just building that upper body, the mass he's going to have. It's not like Erik Karlsson's been a great player in the league. There's a lot of Erik Karlsson stuff in this guy, but it took Erik a long time. People forget that. Erik Karlsson had a real hard time defending, especially on the strong side, on the right side. He actually was better on the left side than he was on the right side.
More elite skater than Lane Hutson, obviously, much more elite.
Different kind, because after Matt Cook's situation with Erik Karlsson didn't have that same explosive burst that he had when he was younger. I can tell you, I'm really comfortable telling you this. Lane Hutson in a 10-foot area can cover as much ice as quickly as most players in the NHL. But in a 10-foot area, I'm not talking about a 100-foot area. In a confined area, he is unbelievably quick.
All right. Kent Hughes went on to say that, look, we're not going to have Lane Hutson play with us just and we're going to hide him. We're not going to have him just to be a power play specialist. If he's going to be with us, we want him to be the best defenseman that he can be, the best player that he can be. And he said, we saw him 2 games versus Detroit. We're going to have to see him more. He also went a little further on Lane Hutson. Let's hear what he had to say.
Cacher Lane Hutson, puis faire de lui un spécialiste d'avantages numériques. On veut faire de Lane Hutson le meilleur défenseur qui est capable de devenir. Si c'est en le faisant jouer moins de minutes, mais dans la Ligue nationale, ou peut-être pas toutes les games, mais...
All right. We want Lane Hutson to be the best possible defenseman he can be. That can probably be actually playing in the National Hockey League and not playing a lot of minutes. It can probably be playing in the National Hockey League, not playing a lot of minutes and not playing every game. And it could be in the American Hockey League, playing a lot of minutes and playing a lot of games. After talking to Kent today, and I have to tell you that prior to the conversation, if you were going to ask me if Lane Hutson was going to start the season in Montreal, for me, there was no doubt that the answer was a yes. After talking to him today, and once again, maybe he just doesn't want to overextend himself, which could very well be. He doesn't want to maybe put too much pressure or set the expectations too high. I'm not so sure anymore. So how do you see it?
I think one of the things that people aren't talking about enough is people watched what Anaheim did with Leo Carlsson last year.
Load management.
Correctamundo. And so he's an 18-year-old kid coming in the league. And a lot of people didn't think that he would bypass Adam Fantilli in the draft, but he did. And Pat Verbeek, the GM in Anaheim, understands this because he's seen a lot of young players break into the league that were overwhelmed when he was a player in New Jersey, when he was a player in Hartford, when he was a player in Dallas, when he was a player in Detroit. Pat saw some young guys kind of never get to the level they could have because they got rushed into the league. So they created this thing with the coaching staff led by Greg Cronin about load management. Leo Carlsson's agent is Matt Cater, a guy that I'm very, very friendly with and very familiar with. And they talked between the agent, the coach, the player, and they really created a good thing. I would not be surprised to see Montreal do the same thing with Lane Hutson. That being said, Lane Hutson brings NHL skill level to your team. Tony, he does. He's ready-made NHL skill level. Can he defend at the NHL level? Probably not. Probably not. But can he play offensively at the NHL level? 100%.
So I still maintain and believe that Lane Hutson will start the season with the Montreal Canadiens. And I think the way it's going to go down is what you just said. I think he's going to be on load management. They're going to pick their spots with him. And I would, players that will start the season with the National Hockey League are players that can help you win, players that can make a difference. He can help you win because he can do a lot of good things on the power play. Now, could he end up making you lose because of his defending? Probably not yet on par or ready for the National Hockey League players and National Hockey League size. You can pick your spots with him, right? So like we just said, you can protect them so that he won't end up hurting your team in that regard. So I strongly believe he's going to start with the Montreal Canadiens, and I think your suggestion, Pierre, is the best one. They're going to take a page out of Anaheim's book with Leo Carlson, and that's what you're going to see with Lane Hutson. I believe that.
Not only that, Tony, this is where Stefan Robidon, this is the comfort level that I'm sure Marty St. Louis and upper management has with Stefan Robidon, who changes the defense. He was a defenseman. He understands it. He had to come from a long way back to make it to the NHL, and he didn't. He had a really serviceable career, an honorable person and a real honorable player, Stefan. So all those years you learn, there's certain guys, and I did this as a coach. There's certain guys you can have on at the end of a period. There's certain guys you can't have on at the end of a period. There's certain guys you need when your team's down by 2 with 10 minutes to go that have to be on the ice more. Hudson's one of those guys. When your team's up by 2, Hudson's not one of those guys. So it comes down to how you evaluate game situations as a coach that's responsible for putting the player on the ice. I think the Canadiens will have figured this out. I truly do, based on the decision-making I've seen from them over the last couple of years.
All right. Patrik Laine, who last week or a couple of weeks ago said to members of the media when asked, do you want to come back a 30-goal scorer? He said, I'd like to come back a 40 to a 50-goal scorer, but then added, look, it's not all about the goals. If I score 20, but I help the team win, I'm at a point in my career and at my age where I want to win. And whatever I can do to help the team win, I will do it. Having said that, you can tell individually, he said it. He wants to come back a 40 to 50-goal scorer. So I asked Kent what he thought about Patrik putting himself out there and saying, I want to come back a 40, 50-goal scorer. I asked him, do you think he's putting too much pressure on himself? Already, it's a big pressure-packed environment, Montreal. When you hear one of your players say that, do you think it's a bad thing? Because once again, he's putting extra pressure on himself. Let's hear from Kent Hughes.
Dans le tête à Patrik, il pense qu'il est capable de scorer de nouveau 40 buts. C'est pas parce qu'il l'a pas fait dans les années récentes. Moi, j'ai toujours dit, Tony, que les joueurs n'oublient pas comment jouer au hockey. Quelqu'un qui l'a accompli avant est capable de l'accomplir encore. C'est quoi les obstacles qui l'ont arrêté ou l'ont pas permis de le faire les années récentes? Est-ce qu'il y a les moyens de surpasser ces obstacles puis retourner au talent qu'il a démontré?
I also, and so once again, Kent Hughes saying, look, whether he said it or not, players always, they have goals, and he wants to go out and he wants to overcome some of those obstacles. And it doesn't bother me that he said something like that. I also asked him if before making the trade, he was worried about the fact that Patrik Laine has 2 years left at $8.7 million, because even though it's not Kent Hughes who gave Nick Suzuki the 8-year contract at $7.875 million, it's Marc Bergevin. From the outside, we all have the impression that there was a salary structure to respect. Cole Caulfield got a little bit less than Nick Suzuki. Juraj Slafkovsky got a little bit less than Cole Caulfield. And I asked him if he was worried about that. Will it disrupt your locker room, anything like that, by having a player come in? And he basically said, look, we didn't give Patrik Laine the contract. He was given the contract. We saw a player that was available that we believe can help our team, and we wanted to help our players after the effort that they put in. So we went out and we made the move. And no, I wasn't worried about the fact that he had 2 years at $8.7 million, which is a bigger cap hit than Nick Suzuki. I'd love to have your thoughts on that, Pierre.
Well, first of all, I like the way Ken handled that. Secondly, and I talked about this with Jimmy Murphy last week on the eye test, and I feel strongly about it. This is a very big pat on the back to Marty St. Louis. The fact that Canadians made this deal, it's because they have implicit faith in their head coach to make this player better, to get this player back to where he once was, to make the game fun for this player again, especially in an unbelievably intense and highly scrutinized market like Montreal is. So I think it speaks to definite everybody supporting one another, from Jeff Gordon down to Kent to Marty, but the belief that the upper management and ownership from Jeff Molson has in Marty St. Louis to make this player better as a player, I think it speaks volumes as to the trust they have in Marty St. Louis. So there's a lot there. I don't think the numbers on the contract are going to affect anybody in the dressing room. I really don't. It's a young team. It's an evolving team. I would tell you this, Tony, if it was an established team where there were some really prolonged, bitter contract negotiations and some guys were still left in that room, and let's just say Laine was underachieving, I think there'd be some problems. But in the case of the Canadians, it's a rebuilding team. It's a team that's definitely on more solid footing than they were maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I don't think that's going to be an issue. It should not be an issue.
So Pierre, Laine says he wants to come back to be a 40 to 50 goal scorer. The last Montreal Canadiens player to score 50 goals, number 44, Stéphane Richer, back in 1989, 1990. And a couple of years before that, he had his first 50 goal season. So he scored 50 plus 2 times in a 3-year span. Richer has told me in the past, and some of his teammates have told me in the past as well, that they went to the coaches and they said, look, this guy's got a special talent. Maybe we should cut him a little bit of slack. Maybe we should give him some liberties. Maybe we can cover for him a little bit defensively so that, he worries a little bit more about the offense. We know what they're trying to do here. They're trying to build a team culture and a team first over individuals. Marty St. Louis worked hand in hand with Cole Caulfield this past year to make him a more 200-foot player, to make him a better player. I want to ask you, do you believe in a special rule for a player that has a special talent?
Yes.
Like, I would imagine coaches probably didn't ask Brett Hull to play too much defense. Please elaborate, Pierre.
Well, I was fortunate enough to work with some really special players over the course of my career. And the guys that were more blessed offensively, they had a little bit more rope to run with in terms of dominating the puck. And if there was a turnover, you didn't lambaste them as much as a guy that was a depth player that was in a checking role. I've had players that were amazing shooters, and you say to that player, shoot whenever you get an opportunity. I'll use a great example, and I hope he's listening. I had Patrik Laine when he was 19 years old, and he could shoot the puck, but we detected just from watching him on tape and watching him live in games that once he gained the offensive blue line, he was always looking to be unselfish because he was a kid. So he'd always pull up and slow down and pass the puck rather than shoot it. And so we finally came up with a rule for him where if he had once he gained the offensive blue line and he had the puck on his stick, he had to get the puck to the net. And we said the same thing to Jeff Sanderson. And I think Sanderson that one year had 42 goals, and I think the next year he had 44. And Poulin, I think, had 19 or 20 goals his rookie year, and then he eventually got traded. But I can tell you, we had to come up with a rule for those guys because they weren't shooting the puck enough. And so we saw the goal scoring potential as a staff for him to do that. And so, I'd say the same thing with Patrik Laine.
But so how do you sell this to your team and to the players without it affecting the culture? You're asking Nick Suzuki to play a 200-foot game. You're asking Kirby Dach to play a 200-foot game. You're asking Slafkovsky to play a 200-foot game. You're asking Newhook to play a 200-foot game. You're asking Dvorak to play a 200-foot game. You asked Cole Caulfield last year to play a 200-foot game. And let's just say you've determined that the player that is the most blue line in player, the player who probably doesn't like defending more than anybody else, is probably Laine. How do you give him these liberties, pass it on to the group so that everyone knows, and have everyone be okay with it? Because Lord knows the other ones would love to have these liberties as well.
I haven't read his name anywhere. I love the way you phrased that question too, Tony. And I haven't heard anybody talk about it. So I'm going to throw something out there that I've been thinking about a lot. When Marty St. Louis was in Tampa, one of his teammates was Vinny Lecavalier. And if you go back and watch those early years in Tampa, Vinny Lecavalier was not a 200-foot player. he was one way and one way only, offense only. He works for the Montreal Canadiens. When Vinny Lecavalier won the Stanley Cup with Marty St. Louis in 2004 and Brad Richards, Vinny Lecavalier was everything. Good on faceoffs. He fought Jerome McGinley. He made plays. He made the players around him better. He scored huge goals, especially in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final versus Calgary. He was a complete player, but he had to work to get there. And I think a guy like that could grab a Patrik Laine and say, look, we want you to be offensive. We want you to be offensive all get out. But you also, one of the great traits for really good offensive players is they force a lot of turnovers. And if you play a little bit of defense and you force some turnovers, you're going to get way more offense. And, I've always said this, and I learned this probably from Scotty Bowman more than anybody. Good defense leads to better offense. Great defense leads to unbelievable offense. And I think if you can sell that to the player, you won't have a problem with the rest of the team either.
What you just talked about, John Tortorella making Vinny Lecavalier a more complete hockey player, a 200-foot hockey player, it almost sounds like what Scotty Bowman did with Steve Yzerman and what Ken Hitchcock did with Mike Modano.
Well, I can tell you right now in the Yzerman thing, because they had experienced the loss to San Jose, Scotty's first year in Detroit, and Steve had never been to the final. And it was a very tough conversation. Scotty told me what he was going to say before he said it, and then he told me what he repeated himself after he said it. And it was a tough conversation, but Steve really responded to it well and eventually went on to be perceived as an amazing winner because that's what he was. He was a winner. And I think, sometimes, not always, but sometimes a player will get a lot from just having a nice discussion with somebody that's been through the wars before.
I asked Kent Hughes if the team that he has now is the team that's going to start the regular season for the Montreal Canadiens. This is what he had to say. Do we have it? I'm not so sure we have it. All right. Okay. It was basically, he said, there's nothing brewing right now. There's no trades on the horizon. All right. Okay. So nothing brewing right now. I asked him about Askarov, by the way, and I said he went, straight into San Jose. Were you interested? And, he said, well, I'm not going to talk about players on other teams. I did that before at one point, and I got my hand slapped for it, so I'm not going to do it again. But Elliot Friedman reports that the Canadiens were very much interested in Askarov. So my question to you is, and look, Elliot's one of the best in the business, so if Elliot says it, I believe it. Now that Askarov's been traded, do you think the Canadiens were interested because they saw Askarov as a number one goaltender? Do you think they were interested because they saw Askarov be part of a goaltending duo? Do you think they were interested because he was going to be an upgrade on Caden Primo? And if they were interested in Askarov, does that lead you to believe that they'll be interested in other goaltenders on the market?
Well, they have a goalie that I think is one of the best goalies outside the NHL, and Jacob Fowler. They know that too. I guarantee if they trade Jacob Fowler, it's because they had a complete misread in their management meetings. It's hard to say that he won't be better than Askarov going forward. He's not ready at this point, but he's very close to being ready. We've talked about that before. The other part, they may have wanted to talk to Askarov or try to get him because they've got a guy coming who's a Russian. A couple guys actually that are coming that are Russian, and their room's not overpopulated with Russian players right now. So, that's another thing they could have been thinking of. But I don't think they missed out by not getting Askarov. I just don't think they missed out because they've got a lot coming. They got a ton coming.
I asked them if a decision has been made to hire an assistant coach, of course, with Alex Burrows leaving the coaching staff and becoming more of a consultant with the Montreal Canadiens. And he said they haven't made a decision yet. And then I asked them, well, if you don't, will Marty take on the power play responsibilities? And he said, well, that's up to the coaching staff to figure out. Pierre, here we are. It's August 27th. Yeah. Preseason is about 4 weeks away, give or take. They haven't hired anyone in Burrows' spot just yet. Would they hire someone now with 4 weeks away from preseason?
They may. I mean, I don't know. They may be just really comfortable with their staff. I don't know what direction they'd go in. Marty can be more than capable of doing the power play. He did it in Columbus. That was really his first venture into coaching in the NHL. When John Tortorella was there, he was the consultant on the power play. He was on some really successful power plays over the course of his career. A lot of times power play comes down to who the assets are that you have to deploy on the ice. I remember being in Pittsburgh and having unbelievable assets, and we had, just an amazing power play. And then you go to Hartford and you don't have nearly the same assets. And everybody's like, well, what's wrong with your power play? Well, I don't have 66. I don't have 7. I don't have 25. I don't have 10. And I don't have 55 here. Those are all elite players. So in Pittsburgh back in the day. So anyways, it is what it is. But I think Marty, if they don't hire another guy, is more than capable of running the power play. And that won't put too much stress on him.
Prior to acquiring 6'5" Patrik Laine, the great Serge Savard said that if he had a concern with the Montreal Canadiens is that the team needed to get bigger. There were too many small players, in his opinion. So I asked Kent Hughes if he thinks he can win with small players. This is what he had to say.
On croit qu'on peut gagner avec des petits joueurs, sinon on n'aura pas fourni Cole un contrat de 8 ans. Est-ce que je crois qu'on peut gagner avec 12 joueurs d'avant au même grandeur que Cole Caulfield? Non. Encore, je pense que c'est une question qui m'a été demandée. Je pense même l'année qu'on a repêché Slav, après le repêchage, quelqu'un m'avait demandé si on croyait vraiment dans la grandeur des joueurs vu qu'on avait pris au premier choix overall. Puis j'ai dit, écoute, je ne suis pas inquiète des petits joueurs. On voit aujourd'hui qu'on a un des meilleurs dans l'histoire en arrière de notre banc, puis je le prendrai s'il était dans son prime sur notre équipe n'importe quelle journée.
All right, there you have it. He says, do I think we can win with small players? Yes. If I didn't, I wouldn't have given Cole Caulfield an 8-year contract. Now, do I think we can win with 12 players who are Cole's size? No. But he says, I was asked when we drafted Slavkovsky first overall if we drafted him just because of the size. And I said, no, it's not just because of the size, because once again, if Marty St. Louis was available today and he was in his prime, I would take him any day of the week on my team. But once again, he reiterated, I think what he's trying to say, Pierre, is that there has to be a balance. And probably there's a number of small players in his head where he would be comfortable with and not more than that. I want to throw something at you. Is it safe to say that probably the maximum amount of small players, and it's all relative, right? Because you can have a player who's 5'11", but he's like 206. But would it be safe to say that the maximum amount of forwards that you can probably win with who are on the smaller side would be on average 1 per line?
Oh, that's a lot. I would say
that's a lot.
Yeah, I would say no way. Maybe 3 or 4, but maybe 4, but I'd say probably closer to 3.
Closer to 3. Okay.
Yeah, and if you look at the Canadiens right now, they're going to have to deal with a small guy in defense too, in Lane Hutson.
So pardon me, Pierre, 1 on each of the top 3 lines, with a 4th line being bigger to be an energy line.
More stout and harder to play. I mean, if you look at the way it's really built now, the teams that are winning. So you look at Vegas, you look at Tampa, you look at Florida, you look at St. Louis, you look at Washington. We're talking since 2018. If you look at Colorado, you look at the teams that have won, the blueprint's pretty simple. Big people, especially on defense, mobile people, and some really stout defense. If you got too many small guys, you're not going to be able to hold up. It's just too hard. It's way too hard. I'll give you an example, Tony. One of the biggest difference makers in the NHL playoffs this year was Sam Bennett. And he was the year before too. He's a big guy, Tony. He's a mean guy.
And he's talented.
He's got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Those guys help you win. I was very surprised, and I like a lot of what the Rangers have done. I was really surprised that Barclay Goodrow was no longer part of their team. Really surprised because of what he did for them in the playoffs and the way he plays and the fact that he's got winning pedigree. He's won in Tampa. He knows what it takes to win. I was really surprised by that.
So let me just say this. Based on what you said, would it be safe to say that when the Montreal Canadiens become a very competitive team, it shouldn't be more than players under 6 foot tall at the forward position? It shouldn't be more than Suzuki, Caulfield, and maybe Newhook.
Yeah, I would say that's very fair. And here's what I would tell you, Tony. I always use this player as an example because he was such a good player and he won Stanley Cup. Sergei Brylin. Sergei Brylin wasn't a really big guy, but he was hockey strong like you can't believe. And you could talk to Jacques Lemaire about that. You could talk to, well, if the late Pat Burns was still alive, he would tell you the same thing. Jacques Leperrier would tell you that. Larry Robinson would tell you that. All guys that work with Brylin. He was a really important player in those Devils teams. It wasn't because of his size. It's because of how strong he was. He wasn't a big man, but he was unbelievably strong.
I'm going to bring it up with Jacques because I'm going to see him on Thursday.
There you go.
He's being honored here in Villa Sal at the Jacques Lemaire Arena. As a matter of fact, they're
I've
going to
been
put
to a
something
few games at that arena over the time.
Yeah, and it's going to take place in the afternoon, and I was lucky enough to actually receive an invitation, so I'm very much looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Pierre, in ending, actually, why don't we give a shout out, of course, to Manta Sleep if we can. It's the only mask designed for the deepest possible sleep in any environment, 100% blackout for deeper sleep. It's very adjustable, gives you a personalized fit. It's really, really comfortable. You should see the cushions around it, and it'll block out any light coming into your eyes while you're sleeping. I don't know about you, but I always see a light. Visit mantasleep.com and use code SICKHABS, and you'll get 10% off. All right, okay. So in ending, I said to Kent, I said, look, Kent, I said, I've been pushing for the rebuild since 2009, so I really love the path that you guys have taken. You've missed the playoffs over the last several seasons, and you know what? No problem for me, because I believe it's a consequence of the decision taken and the philosophy taken and the plan taken of the rebuild. So I don't have a problem with that. Having said that, if you miss the playoffs this season, are you ready to say that it's a failure? So I'm waiting. I'm trying to get him to say whether or not they're still in the rebuild or they're out of the rebuild, right? This is what he had to say.
D'être dans le mix, Tony, on n'a pas fixé un objectif qu'on faut absolument faire les séries. On a fixé un objectif de continuer. Les objectifs, au moins du côté de l'équipe de gestion, étaient d'améliorer l'offensif.
All right, okay. He said, our goal was to improve the offense, and what we want to do is we want to be in the mix. We haven't set a goal to go out and make the playoffs. We've set a goal to improve the offense, to be in the mix and play some very meaningful games late in the season. Pierre, now at the same time, he either A, really believes that, or look, in the back of their heads, I'm sure they all want to make the playoffs, right? But they are probably not just they're managing the expectations, or you believe it's legit to say we want to be in the mix?
No, it's legit to say they want to be in the mix. I keep telling you all the time, they got to get to 250 goals. If Patrik Laine can hold up his end of the bargain, they're going to get 250 goals. They will. They'll get there. And if they do that, they're going to be really relevant all the way down to the end of the season. They will. Now, the problem for them, they're in a really tough neighborhood because Detroit's going to be better. Ottawa better be better. New Jersey, even though they're in the Metro, they're going to be better. Buffalo better be better, or they're going to be in trouble as a management team. The Rangers are good. Philadelphia, I think, can build off a lot of what happened last year. Washington made huge offseason moves. They should be better. I don't think Tampa and Florida are going to fall off. So it's a tough neighborhood, especially the Atlantic, Tony. The Atlantic's tough. I mean, think about it. You think I'll just play this game with you? Are the Florida Panthers going to make the playoffs?
100%.
Tampa Bay Lightning going to make the playoffs?
I believe so.
Toronto Maple Leafs going to make the playoffs?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so that's 3. I haven't gone to the Boston Bruins yet. You think they're going to make the playoffs?
I think they should. I mean, I thought they were going to take a step back last year, and they did, but they're still obviously they surprised me, and they've added some key players. I would say yes.
So we agree. So it looks like there will be 5 teams from the Atlantic and 3 from the Metro. And if you're Montreal, you better hope that you're that 5th team.
And you're battling with Detroit. You're battling with Ottawa.
Detroit,
you're battling
Ottawa,
with
and Buffalo.
I don't worry about Buffalo. They've had a losing mentality for like 12 years. They got pretty good wings, though. I can tell you that. Pierre, a lot of fun as always. Thanks so much for doing this, and we'll talk to you soon.
Always, Tony. Congratulations on your new job. That's fantastic.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you very much. I know it's heartfelt. All right, there you have it. Pierre McGuire, special thanks to all of you. And there you have it. If you like the show tonight, comment sick, share it with your friends. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love for Sammy Cavallaro at Master Control. Thanks for watching, everyone. It's a sick podcast. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBeat.tb, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.